Alaikum everyone. May God's peace be upon you. My name is Simon Jamal. I am the Program Director for the Calgary Islamic Chamber Institute and your host for today. So what is today about? Today is our first inaugural Business Marketing and Technology Conference. We wanted to get all of you here together so we can actually talk about how we can work on enhancing your businesses, enhancing your professionalism, enhancing your just careers. So here we are today with a full day of complete learning experience from 10 amazing speakers that are going to hopefully razzle-dazzle you throughout the day. So again, welcome to the Calgary Islamic Chamber Institute's first conference. And I guess a few things just to do in terms of housekeeping items. As you can see, there's 2 exits on the 2 sides. There's washrooms right here. And with that being said, I have a couple things to tell you. If you look in your table, there's things that we have put. There is, as I said before, there's a bingo card, a piece of paper, a bingo card, where actually you'll be writing and talking about whoever you talk to, you just put them down in there. See how they fit in what you're working at. There's also a referral card. That card is there for you to fill for someone that you would like them to join the Chamber of Commerce. And you put that referral card in a red basket, which is, where's the red basket? Right here, on my left side. And there's a $250 gift certificate for that from Nilu's Kitchen. When it comes to our food people, how did you guys like our breakfast? Excellent? Okay, wonderful. So there's 2 people that I would really like to thank for that. If they could just stand up and wave their hands. Kashif Zafar and Ahmed Rafakin. See those 2 people? That's who you say thank you for that. Now, Kashif and Zafar and Ahmed, they're both realtors, and they're with Urban Realty. I know a lot of you obviously know realtors in your personal circle, but there's some realtors that actually come out and they're doing something for our community that we would really like to recognize them for. And it's not just their work in the community. If you're thinking of selling or buying a house, please, we would really ask you to think about Kashif and Ahmed. And I have a personal experience just to tell you about in that sense. Kashif last year just helped me sell my house and buy my house too. So this guy, he didn't just find me the perfect house that I was looking for, and by that don't really mean find, I mean like fight to find that perfect house. He got a professional wedding photographer to come and take pictures of my old house. He paid for my entire moving expense. So he's the kind of realtor that you really want. So again, he's our premium sponsor, him and Ahmed, so we'd really like you to think about him when you're considering selling or buying a house. So that's my little tidbit for the breakfast sponsors. Thank you, guys. With that being said, another couple of things to tell you about. We would really like to stay on time, and we are hoping that we do. With that, I would like to introduce our first of the 2 keynotes that we are having today. So, the first keynote, my boss, Dr. David Liepert. Where is he? Oh, he's behind me, okay. David, he's a 20-year-old Muslim convert, and he's also... Sorry! He wishes, eh? It's been 20 years since he became a Muslim. Okay. He's a physician, he's an anesthesiologist at the Rocky View. He's a teacher, he's a medical entrepreneur, and he's also an advisor with the Canadian Imams Council. He's into research and development through his organization, Sensor Mobility. He's the president of Love Strong Shah Communications, and he's also a board member of the national organization, the Canadian Islamic Chamber of Commerce. And we're the second branch that have formed from the national organization. So with that, we would like to welcome Dr. David Liepert.
Oh, to be 20 years old again. Kashif and Ahmed, thank you so much for the breakfast. That was just And I'm going to try very quickly, because I've already got my marching orders that we have to be on time, to tell you what the Islamic Chamber Institute is, and basically why I'm so excited that it is being launched, and why I'm so excited that we are seeing so much support. We are, as I've said here, we are values driven, and yet a lot of people are concerned about whether or not we are value driven. And one of the things I'm going to be talking to you about very quickly today is why that's the wrong question. And you guys all know the story of stone soup, that there was a starving village and everyone was bemoaning the fact that they didn't have anything to eat that day. And a man came and he sat down a pot and he put some water and he put a stone into it and he started it boiling. And people started coming up and saying, what are you doing? And he said, I'm making lunch, I'm making stone soup, it's going to be absolutely delicious. And people said, well, can I have some of that? Because I don't have anything. And he's told everybody, yes, you're welcome to join. If you have something to add to the soup, that would be great, but you don't have to add anything to the soup. You're welcome to have, and people started bringing things. They brought stuff to add to the soup, and pretty soon, from this bowl of boiling water and a stone, they had a wonderful lunch. But their business model was wrong. And that's the thing that our Islamic Chamber Institute brings to it. Because what they should have done is they should have had 2 pots boiling. They should have had 2 stones boiling. And they should have made the 2 pots, eaten the first one themselves, and sold the second one and taken that next day off. And that's the thing that we're going to be building here is, inshallah, with the help of God, we are going to be building ourselves up. We're going to be building our community up. We are going to be bottom-driven rather than top-driven. We are going to be elevating and educating and inviting. We are going to be fulfilling all of those functions because that is the true nature of Islam. Now, this slide, welcome to the anti-myth. With that slide, I'm invoking all kinds of images. Some people have looked at it and said that I'm invoking the idea of the... oh, sorry. That's why nobody went. The anti-myth. It kind of invokes the idea of the Antichrist, peace be upon him, because to a certain extent, we have made a god of money. We have made a god of making money. And myth, God love him, kind of typifies that. But the most important thing that he typifies to me is this idea of being a robber baron. Because the way he made most of his money was kind of by feasting on the bones of his neighbors. That he would buy things for the value that they had and then tear them apart and sell that to other people and leave with nothing. And that is one way to make money, but it is absolutely the opposite of the way we're supposed to make money in Islam. He basically said corporations are people, and he got very famous for that, and it's true. Corporations are people, but you know what? Corporations as people, they're described as soulless. And people who say that, they mean it as an insult, but it's really just a description. Because corporations are not created by the God who made us all. Corporations are created by us, and as such, they don't have souls. They don't have what it takes to be part of a community of created beings. And that's the thing that Islam brings. Because we know we are members of a community of created beings. If businesses are people, what sort of people are they? They're people that greed actually is good. It really should be all about you, because there is nothing else. Success should be measured by how much you consume and the assets you accumulate. If you're doing business with somebody, they should beware, because it's all about getting as much as you can. It's all about making money. It's all about you from a corporate perspective, and that's the way things actually should be. That kind of gave us, yes, the slides are changing properly, that gave us the situation we have in the world right now. And what I'm here to tell you today is the Islamic perspective actually could have helped prevent virtually all of this. The mortgage crisis. Islam says risk must be shared. The trouble with the mortgage crisis is the Western model for mortgage, you don't actually have a business relationship with your bank. What you do is you rent the bank's money. And if your house goes down in value, you still rented the bank's money. The Islamic model, everybody is in it together. If value goes up together. If value goes down together. You can't separate risk from profit according to Islam. And that just makes sense from a community perspective. If we're all in it together, then there shouldn't be some people who take risk and some people who take profit. The banking crisis, one of the requirements of Islamic finance, one of the central requirements is that profit must bring increase. That you can't make money by taking somebody else's money. If you look at that, it's kind of like stealing. If you're taking something away from somebody, that really, in a lot of contexts, is considered to be theft. But in the context of the derivatives market, for instance, it's just good business because you can do puts and calls and trades and options, and you can actually make money by other people losing money even though nothing has actually increased in value. And that's what's given us our world economic crisis. This idea that it can be all about you, that it's okay to take money away without bringing increase, that it's okay to separate risk from profit. Whereas if we're all part of a community together, if we're all part of something bigger than just us, then it becomes more viable. So it's not about just making money by taking money. It's not about just getting reward. It's not about destroying things to make money. War is the worst example of that. Yeah, you can make money by declaring war on somebody else if you're the guy who's selling the bullets. But in the end, the long-term impact of that is you've destroyed a potential market. And it costs way less to destroy something than it does to build something, but the long-term gain from building something together is a benefit to every community. In the context of war, it's really about making money faster rather than making money slower. Gardens are good, who cares about the other guy's wasteland? That's kind of the paradigm that we're fighting against. This guy, Kazuo Inamori, he's the founder of Kyocera. You guys probably know him as the photocopier guy. His photocopiers are user-friendly, they're ecologically sound, they work. His business model is to be part of a community. He's also the chairman of Japan Airlines, and they're kind of one of the nicest airlines to fly with. And I put him up there because this isn't just the religion of Islam that says that. Yes, that's what Islam brings. That's what Islamic finance brings. But it just makes sense. I had a great conversation a few years ago with Daniel Saradsky, who was the leader of Occupy Judaism that was part of the Occupy New York movement that unfortunately fizzled. But he really kind of brought a Jewish perspective to things. And he said, you know, the trouble is the banks always end up owning everything, and that's why in Judaism we set up a system where he told me every 50 years the banks had to get it back. Because what happens is, and this is from the days of ancient Samaria, people with land want money, so the banks would give them money for their land. The money never went down in value. The land sometimes did. Every time that happened, the bank ended up owning a little bit more land. So, over the course of decades, banks ended up owning everything, so they had to bring in this Jubilee year. So, they've been struggling with how to separate risk from profit for eons. And that's why the Islamic principle is that you can't do that, because this has been an ongoing problem, and it's not just Muslims who are saying that. Everybody has been saying that all along, and it's what we need to say more and more often. Because in fact, it is all about us. As we build each other up, we build markets, we build opportunities, we build everything together. I'm going to have to talk faster. We are also the anti-Osama, because, you know, Islamic invites adoption. People like Osama bin Laden, they really want to impose. And anytime you want to impose anything, whether you want to impose gently or with force, you invite opposition. Medina was actually a marketplace of ideas. And the ideas that grew because they were better ideas. And they grew because people had conversations. And if you're listening to people, they're listening to you. We're already doing that. I don't know if you guys noticed, but when we started fighting against this thing they're doing in Quebec, where they're taking away the right to wear religious apparel and things of that sort, and everybody knows that it's primarily directed at Muslims, but when they started doing that in Calgary, the Calgary Catholic Diocese has been front and center with our Muslim Council of Calgary, helping people understand that that's not a good way to go. And they're doing that because of us. They're doing that actually because Adrian Martins is my partner in a few things, including the fact that he wants to create a Islamic chamber for the Christians in town too. And I put him in touch with the Muslim Council of Calgary, and the Muslim Council of Calgary is now working with the Catholic Diocese. The next big event that we are actually doing with our Islamic Chamber is promoting dialogue and conversation. And I want to tell you guys about this. I actually have it on my file. Syria, is international law the enemy of good? Is being discussed at the Akram Jonas Center. It's a partnership between the Muslim Council of Calgary, us, the Calgary Center for Global Community, and Project Plowshares. So we're promoting productive dialogue. That's actually what my company, Love Strong Shaw, does. We promote productive dialogue at every single level. And we promote the marketplace of ideas. Now, how are we going to do it? We're going to improve commerce through diversity and promote diversity through business and trade, because the reason why we have trade is because it's God's way of bribing us to actually get along with people. Because of the Eskimo-Egyptian ice sand trade, because the Eskimos needed sand, the Egyptians needed ice, and the first, and this is a joke, but the first Muslim traders created a trade where they were taking sand from the Egyptians and selling it for ice to the Eskimos, and selling the Eskimo ice to the Egyptians, and everybody was happy, and everybody celebrated diversity, because the Eskimos were thinking, well, who would want to pay for ice? And the Egyptians were saying, well, who would want to pay for sand? But they needed it to not slip, and they needed it to not boil. And they created a world celebrating diversity. That's why we have trade and commerce. That's why trade and commerce is approved. And how we're going to do it? We're going to do it like this. We're going to do it by promoting and elevating. And I'm running out of time. So imagine a world where we actually use trade and commerce for what it's supposed to be used for celebrating diversity and finding ways to profit from diversity and from promoting conversation and dialogue and all of the good things that we can do together. Imagine a world where we build everybody up, because that's the world that we're going to make, inshallah, God willing, together. No peace, no justice. N-O. K-N-O-W, justice. K-N-O-W, peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. That's the vision of the Islamic Chamber. God bless you all for being here today. Thank you. Oh, I forgot to change my slides. Sorry.
Actually, rather than me just going up there, I'm going to introduce our next speaker right from here. So before we even go introduce our next speaker, we have a couple more announcements. First of all, we would like to recognize Mike Sheikh. Mike Sheikh, where are you? There he is, Senator-elect. Thank you for coming, Mike. Another thing, I don't want everyone to get very comfortable in their chairs, because right after lunch, you would be asked to change your tables. And by that I mean, like, a few people from here has to go sit somewhere else, because we really want you to mingle. We don't want you to get discomfortable in your own group. We want you to get out of that comfort zone and meet somebody else. So that's going to be happening right after lunch. So with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Mark Frey. Mark comes to us from Cambridge Financial. He's the Vice President and Chief Market Strategist. And one of the interesting thing about Mark is when I was Googling him is he does a lot of commentary on BNN, Business News Network. So in fact, I must have also seen you in BNN, but it's just that I never watched BNN until I joined the Chamber of Commerce and I actually pay attention to it. So with that, I would like to welcome Mark. Mark comes here all the way from Edmonton, is it? Or Victoria?
Victoria.
Victoria, yes. So he's our out-of-town speaker. So thank you so much for coming, Mark. Go ahead. And right after Mark, we'll have Q&A. Thank you. And sorry, before you clap for Mark, I really want you to listen actively, not just passively. And by that I mean I want every table in this room to come up with a question for David and Mark. So write down your question and I will be coming to you and asking them. Thank you. Mark, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry, could I ask you just to turn the monitor so I can see it? Would that be okay? So thank you all for allowing me to be here today. It's certainly an honor and a privilege. I do reside in Victoria now, but please don't hold that against me. I do have roots in Calgary. I grew up in oil and gas country. I went to school at the University of Calgary and studied natural gas economics there. And I started my career here in Calgary working on a trading desk. And perhaps most importantly, I consider myself to be a huge Calgary Flames fan. More so as a Roma Gimla, Mika Kiprasov fan, however, so the next season should be rather interesting, I think. So what are we going to talk about? So my goal in looking at the energy and the enthusiasm and meeting a number of you in this room this morning is not to kill that enthusiasm over the next 20 minutes talking about economics. So my goal is to provide you a little bit of context with which you can go back to your daily lives and make decisions from an economic perspective in terms of what the economic outlook looks like for the city of Calgary going forward. Perfect. All right. Okay. So what are the things we're going to talk about? We'll talk about, at first, Calgary is very much a dynamic economic community. It's a diverse economic community, but it's also very much an international economic community. So in terms of talking about economic trends in Calgary, we're going to start first talking at a global level. We'll talk about some national and provincial issues, and then finally some issues on the ground here in the local market as well. And again, what I'm looking for you to be able to walk away from this conversation with is just simply to have sort of a view of what the market looks like over the coming period. And at the end, I'll provide a forecast, which is always the fun part. What I always like to do when I give a discussion like this is 6 months later, I like to open up my presentation and look at what my forecast was showing and see how wrong exactly I was. So I hope you guys can forgive me if that's the case. So in terms of what we'd like to discuss in terms of the global economic environment, I think one of the key drivers that we've been looking at over the past number of years, since the onset of the financial crisis that the doctor was just mentioning, is one of the things that happened is we've sort of been thrust into this environment where we're trading between a risk-on market environment and a risk-off market environment over the past number of years. Either we're bullish on economic prospects in general, and equities and commodities and markets are well bid, or we're concerned about risk and markets sell off. And part of why this has been allowed to coexist or be the case is that we've had fundamentally low and stable interest rates across the developed world for a sustained period of time. And this is one of the key assumptions that we see changing in the coming marketplace, that this is going to be fundamentally different going forward. Interest rates are going to move materially higher, not just in the United States, but in Canada as well and around the world. So in terms of what that means going forward is there is going to be a great deal of change. I think there will be a great deal of chop in markets. I think we have to get used to sustained, persistent, elevated market levels of volatility for a sustained period of time. So the period of relative stability that we've gone through, in some cases that might sound funny saying we're talking about stability, but in many cases financial markets have been stable. I think that is going to come to an end, and we're going to see a lot more trending volatility in markets. So in terms of what are some of the key drivers that we're seeing, certainly geopolitical instability is certainly a key driver, especially in the market for oil, which is fundamentally important for the city of Calgary and for Alberta in general. Europe is still very much in the throes of a recession, certainly maybe even just hitting the trough of the recession hasn't quite turned up at this stage. The ECB, the EU, and the IMF have all been very effective at cobbling together a solution to avoid the most acute portions of the sovereign debt crisis that we've been facing. But now the challenge is that we need to move forward in terms of finding some economic stability in Europe, and we haven't quite found bottom there just yet.